Welcome to Women of Resistance. Now, Maryam Abu Ghazaleh was born in Pakistan, but her Palestinian roots beckoned her back to Gaza, perhaps because her voluntary services in the much-needed field of physiotherapy would prove to be crucial in the crumbling medical field, where more and more victims of the war would need her services. Here is her story.
When Palestine runs in your blood, don't be surprised when all roads lead back to that very land. Maryam speaks to that journey from Southeast Asia via the Middle East and then finally home.
أنا مريم أبو غزالة، أخصائية علاج طبيعي، مواليد الباكستان. انولدت ب 27/12/1993. تقريبا 4 سنين قعدنا فيها. بعد الباكستان صار الوضع فيها صعب من ناحية الحروب، والوضع الأمني كان فيها جدا صعب. بلشنا نتنقل بين الدول، شوي تركيا، لبنان، رجعنا على الأردن اللي هو دار سيدي الاثنين في الأردن. أنا أردنية الأصل، أردنية فلسطينية. بعدها صرنا نتنقل لدول كتير. اضطرينا إنه نسيب سوريا بعد ما بنينا حياة جميلة فيها، بيت، سيارة، كل إشي، دراسة، أهلنا، صحباتنا، كل إشي في سوريا كان حرفيا رائع. في غزة إجينا فيش معنا إشي، يعني بس معنا شنطة ملابسنا وبس، يعني ما طلعناش غير بشنطة ملابسنا اللي أنا طلعت فيها من دوما. الآن إجينا على غزة. هون بلشت مرحلة جديدة. بابا حكى لا، أنا بدي أعيش في غزة وبدي أستشهد في غزة. أنا أصلي فلسطيني، فأنا بدي أرجع لأرضي، وأنا بحب، كان يعشق غزة عشق، يعني هو ووالدتي وأهلي يعشقوا غزة عشق. فحكى أنا بدي أرجع على غزة، رغم معرفته إنه جاي على غزة مش سهلة وإلها ثمن ضخم، وعارف إنه هاي منطقة حروب، يعني هاي مش بلد إحنا قاعدين فيها، كل سنة سنتين بيذكرونا في حرب هيك على الماشي. فإجا هنا وسكن في غزة.
Palestine was in Maryam's DNA, but there were also other practical considerations that made the move a tricky one for a young woman about to embark on a new chapter.
فترة جيتي على غزة ما كانتش سهلة، وبدايتها كانت جدا صعبة. إن أنا سبت سوريا، الموطن اللي أنا أعشقه، وأجي على غزة أبني حياتي من أول وجديد. وكنت طالبة توجيهي. طول عمري في المدرسة كنت متفوقة. الآن فترة التوجيهي كنت بطمح إن أنا أطلع جراحة عظام، يعني أطلع أدرس جراحة، وفي تخصص العظام بالذات. أنا عاشقة العظام، يعني جيت هنا على غزة كنت خاطبة بالبداية. بعد الفصل الثاني اتزوجت، فكان زواج وسفر في نفس السنة تقريبا.
Maryam had experienced conflict before and lived under dangerous conditions, but the first Israeli strike on a community she was a part of was a terrifying shock.
وأنا قاعدة في الدار، وبابا وماما كله نايم، بابا وماما نايمين، إخواني نايمين، كلهم نايمين. سمعت صاروخ ضربوه F-16 في الكتيبة. أول صاروخ صعب أنسى، لأني أنا من الخوف أول مرة أسمع صوت زي هيك بالضخامة هذه، ومن الخوف ما قدرتش أوقف على إجري.
The desperation to find safety amidst an Israeli attack was a horrific time for Maryam, knowing martyrdom could be seconds away.
لأن بعدها وإحنا موجودين في نص الشارع ما إلنا أي مأوى غير إن إحنا قوينا لعمارة مهجورة، بس للأسف هاي العمارة كانت مسكرة بجنزير، أهلها كانوا ناسحين كلهم. إجا زلمة كبير في العمر انحبس معنا في نفس الشارع. حاولنا إنه إحنا ننشر الجنزير. كان في زي أداة أنا مش عارفة إيش اسمها، بس هي زي منشار طويل وفي مقلاع زي هيك. المهم حاولنا بكل الطرق، كان الموضوع حياة أو موت. إيدينا كلها تجرحت، كلها صارت دم، إنه إحنا بس بنحاول ننشر الجنزير بسرعة عشان نكسر الباب وندخل على العمارة هاي نتقوى فيها. وفعلا وصلنا للعمارة. توقعت إنه إحنا أسوأ حال، إلا إنه للأسف في هذيك الفترة سمعنا صوت ضرب مش طبيعي، قصف في كل المنطقة. سمعنا حزمات نارية قاعدة عم بتصير. إحنا سامعين قصف وشايفين الضوء، بس إحنا مش عارفين وين ولا عارفين إيش فيه، لحتى ما طلع علينا الصبح. في هذاك البيت في الليل بنساش إن أنا صرت أسمع أصوات، وأنا عارفة يعمل باب مهجور. إحنا اللي فتحناه في إيدنا، البيت مهجور. سمعت صوت أصوات، لقيتهم أجدكم الله عرس، اللي هم الفيران الكبيرة، لأنه البيت مهجور. واضح إنه صار له فترة طويلة، كان مليان. فأنا صرت خايفة من اليهود، وصرت خايفة من الفيران اللي موجودة في الدار.
Sheltering from the bombing and Israeli tank fire was harrowing. There was panic as pleas were made for the safety and whereabouts of loved ones. Some made the decision to break cover and seek refuge and answers elsewhere. It was a decision that would cost them their lives.
حاولنا نتسلل العمارة قدر الإمكان. واحدة من اللي موجودات معي كنا إحنا 4 نساء وطفلين. واحدة من الموجودات معي تحكي لي صوت رفيف صوت رفيف. بحكي لها يا بنت الحلال والله ما فيش صوت رفيف. رفيف بخير أنت هدي. أنا حاولت إني أهديها يعني هدي طول الليل وهي تحكي صوت رفيف. لا رفيف فيها إشي. بحكي لها يا عمي هدي الموضوع فيش فيه إشي. لحتى ما وصلنا طلع الصبح حكونا الدبابات الآن الشارع بيننا وبين العمارة ما فيش احكي 100 متر. حكونا لطريق العمارة فيش إشي فيش دبابات. صرنا نتسلل للعمارة نحاول نوصل لها. ما وصلنا للعمارة لقينا العمارة كلها محروقة. البدرم محروق كل إشي فيها محروق ومضروبة محروقة من الطابق الثاني للسابع ومضروبة بكل الطوابق من ضمنهم الطابق الثالث والطابق الرابع. طلعنا على الدرج لقينا أغلب سكان العمارة مقطعين كلهم واللي فقدت زوجها اللي كانت فاقدة زوجها اللي طلع وفقد لقيناها مستشهدة مقطعة كلهم محروقين ومن ضمنهم رفيف. كل الطابق الثالث والرابع تقريبا استشهدوا. عشان أطلع فوق أحكي لهم خلاص لهون وبس إحنا بدنا ننزح. حكوا لنا وين بدنا نطلع الآن فيش إلا مكان ما في إلا مكان. حكيت لهم غير إنه نحن نروح على الشفا. حكيت لهم فقط شو بدنا نروح حنفترش في الشفا وننام ندبر أمورنا زي الناس. فعلا سحبنا حالنا وبأعجوبة طلعنا من العمارة للشفا.
Maryam was not overawed by her new circumstances. Where others might have seen tragedy and sorrow, Maryam saw an opportunity to put her skills to use and help her people.
وصلنا على الشفا حكيت خلص الآن حان وقت إني أنا أبلش أتطوع في الشفا بشكل رسمي كممرضة وأبلش أشتغل كممرضة. اشتغلت كممرضة وبلشت كل اللي درسته قبل أطبقه. اتعلمت كتير هناك للأمانة كتير كانوا الطاقم رائع. كان كل الموجودين في الشفا متطوعين. كان جيش من المتطوعين موجود في الشفا. بعدها ضليتني في الشفا تقريبا شهر ونص وأنا ممرضة إشي بغرفة الغراز بغرفة الجبس. بعد فترة من تطوعي كممرضة بلشت أشوف إنه ما فيش ولا تخصص علاج طبيعي موجود في المستشفى. أي حالة محتاجة علاج طبيعي أو تأهيل أو حتى استشارة مش موجودين بسبب إنه القسم مدمر وكل الأخصائيين كانوا متحصرين. بلشت أتطوع كعلاج طبيعي أقدم جلسة هون أخلص تمريض أبلش أقدم جلسة هون جلسة هناك. بلشوا المرضى يعرفوا يطلبوا بزيادة لا إنه إحنا محتاجين كمان إحنا علاج طبيعي موجود في المستشفى. بلش عدد الحالات علي يزيد لدرجة إنه أنا يجيني 100 طلب في اليوم. حكيت أنا لا ما بقدرش أكمل يعني حتى لو بخدم من الصبح لليل بقدرش أكمل 100 جلسة في اليوم مستحيل. فمباشرة بلشت أسس أول فريق اللي هو فريق الشفاء. كانوا 3 أخصائيين معي رائعين كانوا. كل اللي اشتغل هناك اشتغل بس عشان يخدم. ما في أي إشي لا في وظيفة لا في راتب لا في منصب ما فيش إشي تخدموا بس.
In the midst of genocide, Maryam and her colleagues became beacons of light for the injured who were struggling with post-operative care. To have nothing to give but give everything is becoming ever more a Palestinian trait.
وصلنا للمدرسة. في المدرسة أول ما وصلت للمدرسة صار موضوع إنه رجعت انقطعت خدمات العلاج الطبيعي من أول وجديد في غزة. تأهيل المصابين ما بعد الحرب جدا مهم لأنه من دونها المصاب لا بيقدر يمشي. في مصابين بضلهم على السرير ممكن ما يتوقف حياته كلها بيكون متوقف ما بعد هيك. فالتأهيل كان إشي مهم جدا. هو كان وما زال أهم الأشياء اللي موجودة خلينا نسميها في الكوادر الطبية. إنه بعد ما يخلص عمليته بعد ما يتلقى العلاج بعد ما يخلص إصابته أو خلال إصابته قبل إصابته بعد إصابته التأهيل جدا مهم وبرز أهميته جدا في الحرب هذه. برز أهمية العلاج الطبيعي في الحرب هاي بشكل كبير. انقطعت الخدمات بلشت أسس الفرق الطبية الموجودة. حكينا ما دام انقطعت الخدمات من فكرة المدارس إحنا بدل ما نعمل بس نقطة الشفاء فريق بس واحد في الشفاء إحنا هنعمل فرق كتير في المدارس. في كل مدرسة حنعمل كل مدرسة يكون فيها أخصائي. فكرة النقاط الطبية، لأنه بدل ما المريض في صعوبة المواصلات إنه يجيني للمستشفى أو يجيني لنقطة اللي أنا عاملتها كنقطة واحدة، هيك صار الأخصائي جنب المريض. أنت بتنزل من بيتك في المدرسة اللي جنبك في أخصائي.
As the genocide enters yet another phase, many outside would wonder why Palestinians don't simply leave, surrendering a land and a history in the face of obvious Israeli terror. Maryam knows.
غزة فيها ناس بدها أرضها وبس بدها أرضها. كتير في من أهل غزة كانوا بيقدروا يطلعوا برا، ما نزحوا، ما طلعوا، ما هاجروا، ضلهم ثابتين في أرضهم. هم زي شجر الزيتون، حتى أصعب من قلع شجر الزيتون، متجذرين هنا، مستحيل يطلعوا. يعني اللي بده يطلع من هون حيطلع مش عايش، مش حيطلع عايش، مش حييجوا على رواحنا، مش حييجوا هم إحنا عايشين أساساً. مش حيقدروا على أهل غزة. إذا كان في عندهم واحد عايش حيوقف وجه اليهود يحكوا لهم لا، هاي أرضي، هذا بيتي، ممنوع إنك أنت تيجي عليه، ممنوع إنك أنت تأخذ غصب عني، حتى لو دمرته حبني خيمة وحقعد فوقه. هذه الرسالة اللي وصلها غزة، رغم إنه للأسف غزة هانت على الناس كتير.
Now joining me in the studio today to discuss Maryam's story is Dr. Imranali Panjwani, founder and head of the Diverse Legal Consulting. Welcome, Dr. Panjwani. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Dr. Panjwani, we've seen the story of Maryam. The fact that she was born outside of Gaza, you know, in Pakistan, but she's moved from one city to another. Is this something that is common for, say, you know, the refugees, Palestinian born outside? And what causes that, you know, the constant moving from one place to another?
Sure. Well, God bless you for giving me the opportunity. So one thing, when I was in Jordan a few years ago, and I was speaking to the residents there, a number or many of them fled from Palestine to Jordan. The obvious reason, of course, is sadly the constant conflict in Gaza, and also the state of the refugee camps there, which at times are not in good conditions. And the third reason is, of course, that families, especially parents, want to send their children away for education or try to flee. Some do and some don't. So it very much depends on individual circumstances. But yes, I would say there is a pattern of this, and I can tell you Jordan, Syria, and even during the last year or so since the 7th October issue or oppression of the Palestinians by the Israelis, I received a few emails actually that people who had come out of Gaza and had reached the United Kingdom. So this is just proof, of recent proof as well, that people do try to flee as well.
What I find absolutely fascinating, Dr. Panjwani, is that, you know, there's a war going on. You know you're going to die if you are in Gaza at some point. And people who've managed to come out, they want to go back in. This is something that, you know, boggles the mind. And it's different generations. Here, Maryam talks about her father. But we've heard of women who were in their 20s, you know, managed to make a life somewhere else. They want to go back to Gaza.
Yes.
How do you explain that?
Yes. I think maybe in the West, perhaps, it's something we may not understand because we are not faced with always attachment to land and long-standing culture and heritage. Perhaps our culture is very much shaped by a lot of social and commercial forces. But if you have visited the region, you have two very important things. One, you have a long-standing religious history. Take Masjid al-Aqsa, for example, or even in the Quran, in Surah number 17, verse 1, the atraf, or the surroundings of the masajid, are blessed. There is a lot of spiritual and religious attachment to the land. The other thing, of course, is the ancestors and what happened since the Nakba. When people feel that, no, this happened to my grandparents or parents, there's a huge attachment and belonging, and also wanting to stay in the land. Why should somebody else be removed from the land if that's their property and house? The only way I can describe it is if somebody chucks you out of your own home that you have paid for and that you have worked for. Why should somebody else chuck you out? So there is also a very deep, abiding attachment to that.
What was also interesting is she says that even if one person is left in Gaza, you know, they'll pitch a tent and we will tell Israelis this is not your house.
Yes.
Do you see that? Because, we also heard recently of the death of the photojournalist Fatima Hassano. And she says, we have nothing to lose, but they do have their lives to lose. Why is that not seen as something major to lose?
Well, to give you a religious example, you take Imam al-Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him. It was the same mentality that he is fighting for justice against a corrupt ruler, Yazid ibn Muawiyah. So when we say that they have nothing left to lose except their lives, or their lives should be protected, why should one live a life which is in either dishonor or indignity? Better to die with honor and dignity, standing up for something that is beloved to you and for the sake of God, and is a message to the future generations.
Absolutely. What a message of dignity. Now, just to remind our viewers, you are watching Women of Resistance, where we highlight the plight of women in Palestine. To continue, Dr. Panjwani, now you are an expert, in the legal field. At the beginning of the genocide, we heard about a lot of cases, ICC, ICJ, Where are we at the moment? What kind of legal challenges are being upheld and what is the progress?
So the two recent reports I read, one is only 6 days ago, whereby the Public Interest Law Center and the Palestinian Center for Rights here, they have actually launched a dossier against 10 individuals who have dual citizenship, who are British and Israeli, and they're holding them to account for acts of genocide. So whilst the ICJ ruling that this is a plausible genocide, and the fact that people should not trade and invest with Israel, there are now, it appears to me, movements towards holding individuals accountable who hold British and Israeli dual nationality, who have engaged in genocide. And the second report I read was from Amnesty International, dated 24th February of this year, where they are trying to obviously protest or hold EU ministers to account for hosting Israel's foreign minister more recently. So these things are happening, and sadly that political will amongst America and UK and even the EU is still weak. But certainly the public mood and support for Israel has weakened.
But do you also see that, the field of international law has weakened? Because, we used to believe that international law would work, and we've seen during this genocide that, really they've not been able to stop a genocide. What are the implications of this long term?
Well, long term, one is that international law doesn't have an international police. So it's very much based on the political will of people. Yes, you will find, for example, completely biased coverage and enforcement of law when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, but not when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So this is one, that's the nature of the legal machinery. Long term, sadly, I would say depends on very much the political will of the countries and the public resisting and protesting. When the public begin to always put pressure, in the long term there is hope. But if the public mood is still very much lax, then there is less pressure on countries and governments.
So what would be your advice? For example, for those of us living here in the West, our countries are very complicit, in the genocide that's going on. And we do a lot of protests and stuff, but by them, they are not really achieving anything. So what kind of legal actions can we take? How can we challenge?
So one is holding individuals accountable. Number two is we had the case of Professor Miller, for example, in Bristol University. I think you may have interviewed him. So in those cases, we should not be afraid to speak and allow any challenge to come so that we can overcome it and set a precedent that, no, we do have free speech in this country and you cannot hold us accountable for that. So that's the second thing, not to be afraid to speak within our work and classroom environments. And the third thing, I think, is constant acts of protesting combined with charity. I think as much as we can raise awareness of the plight of Palestinians, that begins to awaken the consciences of the masses.
Absolutely. And I think, learning from how the resistance is, and given the, the way these women are so strong. I mean, that's a message to us, because you can get scared at times, you know. We speak out, we get held up at airports. So it is a challenge. But coming back to the story of Maryam, Dr. Panjwani, you know, we see these women, I mean, time and again, they don't miss a beat. You see, for example, her, you know, she went to Al Shifa hospital initially as, you know, to find some place to hide from the bombing. It didn't take her seconds to start volunteering. She became a nurse. She's now a physiotherapist, and they are learning on the job because, as we know, you know, the medical field has been decimated. Doctors are targeted, you know. Do you find this something unique for the Gazans, or do you think this is just a survival tactic?
Well, it's a combination. As I said, that when I visited in 2022, whatever I could see and speak to the residents, I noticed two things. There is this inalienable fight to not only protect their land, to protect their identity, and still impart skills and teaching to their children. Schools are still formed by families or through UN help, although that has reduced, to still educate the children. That's one. So that means there is a love for education. Then number two, one of the tour guides who was Palestinian told me that Palestinians are amongst the most educated and literate amongst the Middle East. And I observed that from myself. So the second thing is it's not just survival. This is a love for ilm, or love for knowledge and education, which is part of the Islamic heritage. So this is something unique that we can all learn from.
Absolutely, and you know, we can see that. I mean, a lot of interviews that we do with these women, each and every one is so highly qualified, which you don't really see in other places. Now, these are the people, Dr. Panjwani, who are educated, who are very, very resistant, who, you know, believe in the land, who have faith in their knowledge. But Trump is talking of taking over Gaza. Israel wants to remove these Gazans from their homeland. You know, how are they going to do that?
Well, one thing when this reminds me of is when he said to build a wall, to keep out Mexico, to keep out other aliens in his language to the US. That never occurred. So one thing is this is also taken as political rhetoric to create the illusion of superiority, whether or not it takes place or not. Now, it may not happen, and I pray to God it doesn't happen. But number two is that this whole movement is to give support to Israel, right? Is to demonstrate that we have the power to remove Gazans. So it's also, these stories and plans are to weaken the resolve of Palestinians and to also weaken the will of EU and others. So this then comes to our responsibility that no, even if this were to occur, we have to resist it. Because at the end of the day, nobody, according to international law, according to basic morality and decency, can be removed from their land.
But where is this, you know, decency you talk about, Dr. Panjwani? You know, we have been seeing now almost 2 years, we are watching a live genocide. What are going to be the repercussions of us as a world watching this happening and unable to stop?
Yes. It is sad to see the suffering. I mean, I'll give you my personal example that you see it, you feel guilty that you're not doing enough. That's the truth. That's how I feel. But I'm just looking at human history, which is that even if you want to talk about Nazi Germany, you want to talk about apartheid South Africa, in the end, all of these kind of movements collapsed. And although it takes time, it's based on the political will of human beings. Things are never perfect. But I've always seen, whether it's Saddam Hussein, whether it's Yazid ibn Muawiyah, this type of injustice comes to an end. So whatever times it takes, all I can say with some confidence, especially based on social media, is that people are more aware of the injustices caused by Zionism to the Palestinians, which certainly wasn't there before the advent of social media.
And we absolutely pray, you know, for the freedom and justice of the people of Palestine. Thank you so much, Dr. Panjwani, for being with us. And thank you for watching. We leave you with the sounds of Palestine by the artist Save. Goodbye. you.